So if you're somebody whose goal it is to gain as much muscle as you can, or at least even just maintain some really nice healthy muscle and therefore have a nice high metabolism and stimulate fat loss and have a nice lean physique, you really need to understand how growth hormone works and why we want to release it at certain times of the day, and how eating earlier in the day can help you to do that. So essentially, growth hormone is going to be released from the anterior pituitary gland, and it's going to go to a couple of different tissues. And what's fascinating about growth hormone is that it has this interesting dual action, unlike many other hormones that are released throughout the body. Because often with hormones, you'll, like for example, insulin, you're going to release it when you're in a state that is in a fed state. So you're going to be increasing and building things, stimulating the building up of tissue and storage. Whereas other hormones like glucagon are going to be released on the opposite of that. So when you are in a state that you are fasted and you want to break down tissue, there's not many hormones in the body that are able to actually stimulate the building of tissue like muscle, but also lipolysis and the breakdown of fat at the same time. Growth hormone can do this. So what growth hormone does is it gets released out, and it's going to go and knock on the door of the liver and say, let's start releasing out something called IGF-1. That will go to the muscle tissue, and it's going to say, if there's any amino acids available in the bloodstream, let's pull them in and let's help use those amino acids to build up new tissue, new muscle cells, new muscle fibers. And this helps us to obviously have more muscle size overall, but also, more muscle capacity and more muscle functioning. So this is obviously useful if you're somebody who is in the gym and wanting to maximize your stamina. Another thing that it can do, as I said, is it will go to the fat tissue, and it will also stimulate the breakdown of fat tissue. This is called lipolysis and beta oxidation. So it will go to the fat tissue, knock on the door and say, okay, we need to start breaking down, snipping up this fat, and then it will send it to the mitochondria of our muscle cells and say, let's start breaking that down for energy and use it to make ATP. But what's really important to understand about growth hormone is that we require certain situations for that growth hormone to be released. One is an obvious one. You need to be actually stimulating your muscle tissue. So doing resistance training at some point through the day is going to be a really great releaser of growth hormone. But if you want to maximize growth hormone release, you're also going to get that other bump that we look for, which is during the middle of the night when you're in a really deep sleep. And the reason this happens is because we need our blood glucose levels to be very low, and we need our insulin to be baseline. So essentially, we need to be in a fasted state. Because if you think about it, what is a fasted state? A fasted state is considered to be when you are hypoglycemic, not to the point where you feel sick, but just to the point where your blood glucose levels are at their lowest point, so around sort of 70, and your insulin is at baseline. Any other time when when insulin and glucose are higher, you're considered to be in a fed state. I think this is really important to understand this, because a lot of people, myself included in early days, I'd sort of finish eating a meal and I'd be like, right, I'm in a fasted state now. No, you're not in a fasted state until those hormones drop back down, until your blood glucose level drops back down to baseline. And the average person, this is going to take around 3 to 4 hours. Let me give you an example. So if you finish eating at 6 p.m., you're not in a fasted state at 6:30. You're in a fasted state at about 10 p.m. So it takes that 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours really, about 10 p.m., where your insulin and your glucose are going to be down at baseline, and then the other hormones like glucagon can start to raise, and you're in more of a state of being in a fasted state. So essentially, if you finish eating at 6 p.m., it's not really until 10 p.m. that you can safely say, I am in a fasted state. As I said, growth hormone is going to be released when we are in a fasted state. So the criteria we require is that our blood glucose is down at baseline, our insulin is down at baseline, and we have amino acids available in our bloodstream. So if you want to maximize growth hormone release, you're going to do some resistance training through the day, and then you're going to stop eating early enough that when you go to bed, you are in a fasted state. So for most people, for example, if they go to bed at 10 o'clock, they're going to need to finish eating at about 6. Let's say you finish eating at 7, then you might go to bed at 11. It would be ideal to leave 4 hours between your last meal and when you go to bed to maximize growth hormone release. So in summary, if you want to maximize muscle growth or even just the maintenance of muscle, stimulate your metabolism and stimulate fat oxidation, fat breakdown, and use it for energy through the night, you need to be in a fasted state. So you need to finish eating your dinner at least 3 to 4 hours before going to bed to make sure that you're in a fasted state so that you can actually release out growth hormone, stimulate fat loss, stimulate muscle growth.